there?
Thank you.
I'm on the right thing.
So sorry to keep you waiting.
Hello.
Hello.
Success.
I'm so sorry to keep you waiting.
No problem.
Goodness me.
Hi.
Hi, Jane.
Why can't you see me?
I'm not sure, Shelley. Have you checked the video button, or
It
is it
says host disabled participant screen sharing.
right? Do you want to hop out and hop back in again?
I'll try my best.
That sometimes works. Fingers crossed again.
Come back in, okay.
Right. Just get rid of that. Right.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. Yep. That's great. How are you, Teresa?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself, Susie?
Yes. Good. Yes.
Good. It's been a bit cold in this neck of the woods recently.
It certainly has. Yes. I don't know the exact degrees, but yes, it's certainly been.
Yeah.
Oh, fingers crossed.
I'm here. Oh, I'm here.
You there?
There we go. Rolling. That's lovely.
Hi, Jane.
Hello. Look, I'm trying to get it on there, and it comes up
Technology.
no internet. But
We can see you though.
And we can hear you, so be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get connected on John's.
Disconnected here, I think.
Oh, never mind. I'll just manage on my phone today.
I'll be there. Just come through.
Well, oh,
Okay.
well, perhaps you could let me in again, Susie,
Yes, of course
when
I
I ask, and I'll turn my phone off, and then everybody's bigger.
That's
Now
lovely.
let me see. What do I do?
And then you can see a bit more as well.
Yeah, it's better for. Oh. Right. Oh, there we go.
Are you okay, T?
Yes, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I'm fine. I've been meaning to ring you all week, and Jane, and I don't know what's going on in my head. It's awful.
Oh, don't worry, there's plenty going on in my head and it's all awful too.
That looks very stupid. Jane, that looks very stupid.
Wow.
It looks like you should be giving some sort of political commentary because everybody's always got good books behind them.
Did you see Mike Tyndall? Did you see Mike Tyndall when he was doing one of those broadcasts early on in the COVID thing, I think it was, and he had this really impressive bookcase behind him, and one of the presenters rumbled him and pointed out that it was actually wallpaper.
Oh, right.
He clearly didn't know she was going to do that, and of course he had to admit it. I know yours isn't wallpaper, Jane.
Well, it's a back. It's I'm actually facing that bookcase. It's not behind me, but it's one of John's backgrounds.
Oh,
In fact, it's.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we've checked. It's not like that now, but he's gone away to his meeting in another room. So I'm trying to change the view. Here we go.
the wallpaper.
Full screen gallery view, speaker view. No, that's not right.
I'm
2
not quite
seconds.
sure.
I'm just in my porch.
Yeah. Are you?
That's where my computer is. So I don't have a front door anymore. I just got the computer and a bookcase and a cupboard behind me. So.
Oh, that's great. An office.
Well, yes, it's literally the width of the desk. It really is tight, but I've got a printer in here as well, so
Yeah.
it's okay.
Well, it makes you be tidy, doesn't it, if nothing else?
Well, you can try.
And it's all you need, really, isn't it?
It is really, and yeah, I just could do with a better chair because I'm noticing I'm looking up so much. You know, the chair position isn't right. It's just an old chair. Well, I should get a proper office chair. Anyway, hi, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Bye bye. Shirley said hello. Oh,
That's
he's
lovely.
deaf as a post these days. Deaf as a post.
I said,
Right. How has your week been?
ah,
Does it feel like it's gone very quickly?
yes,
Yeah.
it does actually. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you all said there's a lot going on in your heads.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to be. There shouldn't be, but because we've nothing to do, have we? But I've got loads to do.
Yeah.
I've actually been quite busy, well, relatively busy, because it's coming up to Chinese New Year, and suddenly people have woken up and actually realised they haven't actually done what they said they would do in terms of booking stuff. So I have actually done quite a few Zoom meetings this week. So it has actually, it's given me a bit of structure, and I've actually been quite glad to get involved with it, because I think otherwise I would be away with the fairies. Apart from walking the dog, which I do with Gwen and the dogs, I should say. That's my structure. My structure's not very good at the moment. So anyway,
what kind of an impact does that feel you've had on looking after you this week?
Teresa?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No. Oh, I thought anybody. I've been pretty good, and the other thing I've been really good about this week is I have used everything in my fridge. I've been really pleased with myself. I've actually found recipes to finish off everything, and I'm getting an Ocado order at 9:30 tonight, and I have literally nothing left in my fridge apart from mushroom. I'm really proud of myself, because I've managed to find recipes to fill to use up the most bizarre things, but I have done it. So I'm quite pleased about that.
That's brilliant.
Unfortunately, I've used up all the stuff that was in my fridge and in my cupboards, all the naughty stuff that I had for loads of people to enjoy over Christmas, and it was only been me.
Well, the final, I had a packet of dark chocolate and ginger biscuits that I opened on Saturday because somebody came round, she did come in the kitchen, and we had a biscuit and a cup of tea, and then the new dog ate the whole of I left them on the kitchen table, so she ate the whole lot of that. So I worked out it was about 130 grams worth of dark chocolate, which put her at medium risk of dying. So I had to do soda crystals down the throat about 11 o'clock on Saturday night to make her sick. So she's had 2 boxes of chocolates, 1 packet of chocolate biscuits, and an avocado. And today I thought she'd eaten firelighters, but she's not exploded. So I think so. It's a nightmare. The dog is a nightmare.
Yes.
It's lovely.
Wow.
Well, have you sorted out a method of putting her in the car without her getting free to do all that damage?
Well, I'm just getting her in. I'm not leaving her in the car, actually. I'm just leaving it in. I'm just getting her in and out. So, yeah. And we're starting dog school on Zoom.
Right.
Anyway, that's me. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
Thank you. That's lovely.
You recognise my scarf? I put it on for you too.
Oh, is that what you bought in Scarborough?
Lovely.
Very nice.
Oh, gorgeous. Yes, gorgeous. Very nice. We have to get back there, girls. We have to get back. So, yeah.
Sorry, Susie. We're chatting. Sorry.
No, well, I hope you do too. I really do.
Yeah.
This was from Hemsley, actually.
Oh, right. Hemsley.
Right,
Yes.
was it?
There's an
It was the shop,
excellent
wasn't
health shop there.
There is.
Yes, with a very enlightened lady in it.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Yes. Yeah, she's lovely.
Did we go
Did
in
we go in that when we were there?
Where is that, Susie?
You go down, there's a lovely clothes shop on your right as you go down sort of a little alleyway.
This is where I got this.
Turn right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another clothes shop at the bottom, but on the left, there's the Good Life health shop, and on the right, there's a cafe opposite.
Yes.
I don't think we went in it, did we?
No. I've a feeling it might have been closed.
Yeah.
I think so too, Jane.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise we would have been in there, wouldn't we? Yeah.
Well, we would now. Wouldn't we, Jane?
Yes, definitely so. But I've been a lot more mindful of my wheat intake.
Have you?
I'm trying to be, yeah, cutting that down as much as I can.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
good.
but
What did you notice?
I don't know that I've noticed anything yet, Susie, because I haven't cut it out altogether. I haven't managed to do that. Yeah, no, I can't say I've noticed anything particular, but I haven't had any indigestion or pain or gastric reflux lately.
Good.
Not like I was getting over Christmas with all the rich eating and stuff. But I was telling Susie at my one-to-one girls, Henry made a concoction when he was home at Christmas, some deep fried, like donut balls that are traditional fare in the Netherlands. And they're like donut batter made with yeast and had dried fruit in and flour and full fat milk. And afterwards, about half an hour afterwards, I got the most horrendous pain. And Susie was saying, yeah, well, it was like a triple, quadruple whammy, wasn't it, Susie?
Yes.
Really, really, I've never had pain like that since I was ill all those years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a little. It's just to remind you, you see, that you can't do it.
I think so, Shell. I think so.
Well, I had a plate full of Brussels sprouts, and I thought I was going to give birth. I can't tell you. I honestly, my stomach was I was about 6 months pregnant, honestly, and it was definitely the Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
I just ate too many, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I have got 3 jars of fermenting Brussels sprouts on top of my freezer that Henry brought home in the intention of wrapping them up and giving them as Christmas presents. But when he took the lid off, he said, "Oh, and I said to him, you've forgotten your fermented sprouts." He said, "No, don't throw them out, Mum. Please don't throw them out. But if you could just release the top and let the gas out, you better do that in the garden."
Awful.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I've been good and bad. Yeah, just a mix, and then maybe it was. I wasn't sleeping very well, and maybe that's because I've been bad, Susie. Sorry, I should. And then when I sort of caught myself on a little bit the other day, and I started to up the water intake again.
Yeah, me too.
I felt so much better, and I thought it must really be just the water.
Yeah,
it would be an occasional linseed tea. So maybe it was that, you know. But
I genuinely think it is the water. I'm just gobsmacked at how different that makes me feel. Yeah.
I haven't had a drink. I really haven't. I haven't had a drink since the 2nd of January, which is amazing. Yeah. I feel very good, very virtuous.
I have to finish whatever I have before I can say that, don't I?
I even poured half a bottle down the sink.
No,
I did. There we go.
Oh, that was very good of you.
Very good.
It's I suppose even if simply from the point of view of digestion, it's thinking about how at every level you pour water onto food in order to break it down. So even if you're eating food that is inflammatory, that is not as nourishing as you might normally, that at least you've got the water there to help you break it down to some degree, and pour back onto whatever it is you're digesting with acids, with alkaline juices, with enzymes in order to digest it more effectively.
I'm certainly not craving coffee like I used to.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm still drinking it, but I'm not. It's not like the habit it was. So that's really good. Although I have had a coffee before this because I felt a bit sorry. It's very unusual for me to do it at this time of day, honestly.
I find when I have made a coffee, I can only drink half the mug.
Yeah, I just have to sniff it. If I sniff it and have a few sips, that satisfies me. Rather than a big pint,
Well, I'm going to make an apology myself this evening, because I perhaps should have had something with caffeine, because I've had about 3 hours sleep in the last 48, because my little granddaughter was born at 20 to 4 this morning.
Oh, lovely.
And at 2 o'clock on the early hours of Monday morning, Lisa said her waters had broken. So we jumped in the car and drove up to support, because I was birthing, one of the birthing partners, and my husband was looking after her elder daughter. And so then she'd got the contractions coming nicely, and then in the morning everything stopped. And so we were hanging on, and then in the evening, when Connie was in bed and everything gone quiet again, I was able to start doing some reflexology for her, and she took some homeopathic remedies, and everything got going again.
Oh, good.
And so yes, I got back at about 5:45, and then my laptop not open. So I'm so sorry to keep you waiting.
You've had a busy day. You should.
Yeah.
What, you got back at 5:45 this evening, Susie?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You should have sent a message and said, look, we'll postpone it.
Well, I really hope I'm going to make sense. I think I probably will, because after the midwives left at about 6:30 this morning, Andy had had a full night's sleep while the rest of us were up, and so he looked after my granddaughter for about 3 hours before he had to go to work, and then we got up and took over. So
so you were allowed to be with. Did she have the baby in a hospital?
No, Lisa had her second home birth.
That was fine.
She's not wanted to go into hospital for either of them.
Good for her. That's otherwise you wouldn't have been there, would you?
Yeah, no. And they have an excellent home birth team in the area that she's in.
Wow.
So
that's great.
Yeah, lovely.
Oh,
really
lovely.
lovely.
Oh,
good.
Well,
So what weight?
congratulations, Susie. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
what weight was the baby?
£8.3.
Oh, very good.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Any names?
Scarlet Robin.
Oh.
Lovely. Robin with a Y.
Lots of red.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yes. And her big sister has been very sweet with her. It's yeah, patting her,
Oh, how lovely.
stroking her cheek, and very gentle, lovely.
So what age is her sister?
4 1/3.
Oh, right.
Oh.
That's nice. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, she'll be
Oh, lovely.
a little mummy to her.
Yes. Yes. I think she'll enjoy helping. Yeah.
So
So
what
early night for you tonight then, Susie?
It will be. It will be an early night. Yes. My daughter gave me a lift home, my youngest daughter, and my husband rang while we were on the way back, and I'd got this in my hand when we left with water in, and I woke up when my husband rang in the car, and she handed me the flask, and I said, "Oh, did I drop it?" Because I'd obviously gone completely unconscious for 10 minutes. And she said, "No, but I thought I'd better take it in case you did."
Oh.
So I had no idea that she'd taken it from me in the car.
Oh, so you're so exhausted.
It's strange, isn't it?
We can just chat for an hour.
Oh, catch up with you. Yeah, catch up with you.
This
Susie.
evening is a really lovely topic that is probably one of my favourites, so I think we'll be all right. You know, having spoken about these things for, good, oh gosh, how long is it now? 20 years. I hope that it's all still stored up there and will be accessed.
Yeah.
Right, so here we go, if I can find it. I'm sorry, I've just got to pull it up because I didn't get the chance to do that. We're 6, aren't we? Oh, typically it's not responding. That's the story of my life this evening. Oh, dearie me. It's funny how technology seems to match what you were when you're a bit slow yourself. Oh, here we go. Right. Now this is probably something that you're all quite familiar with in any case, because it's sort of a topic. Oh, I can't see any of you.
And we can't see anything from you.
And you can't see anything. Oh, that's a worry. Let's see what's happened.
We can't see you, and we can't see the screen sharing.
Right, let me come back over here. Oh,
You're there.
voila.
You're there. Yeah.
Can you see the presentation?
No.
No. Okay, I'll stop the share and go back in.
Oh, we did for a second then.
I think that was the first page of the.
Try again. How's that?
Yep, got it.
Oh, right.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So again, quite a hot subject over the last several years, really, and particularly because in the media you get a lot of information about low fat, and there's a sort of general myth promoted that fats are bad.
Yeah.
So we've sort of had a look at how we're getting on this week, and we're going to have a look at saturated versus unsaturated fats. The really highly unsaturated fats, your essential fatty acids, what their food sources are and what we use them for in the body, and also have a look at manufactured fats and see why they can be so detrimental. And I'd also be really grateful, you know, if you'd ask at this stage any questions on supplementation, because I'll very gladly answer those. And also, I think that's something that we can go into in more detail when we speak separately as well, and have a real good look at that. And also maybe the use of salad dressings. So as we were saying right at the start, generally speaking, from the media and from industry, you get the idea that you should eliminate all fats. And in actual fact, I would say that if you are unfortunate enough to follow that diet, then you would fast find yourself perhaps not making good food choices in any case. So industry and the media have an agenda, you know, to produce, certainly in the industry, in cheap food and low-fat food that is supposedly going to eradicate obesity. And yet it certainly hasn't in the last 30, 40 years when we've had more and more slimming products. media where they're advertising slimming diets, again, have tended to focus on low fat. I don't know if any of you recognise this, but I'll play it anyway.
Martin Flora.
Wasn't it horrendous?
Susie, wasn't Flora originally for turkeys or something?
Oh, do you know, I've never heard that, but interestingly, it certainly was something, I think, that came out after the war.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure it was an animal feed, and the animals wouldn't eat it, so they put it into the
yeah, you might well be right, because after the war, they had, you know, they wanted to produce cheap fats that would sort of feed the masses very, very cheaply. And they had certainly sort of this margarine product sitting in the wings that I think possibly they had evolved for something else that it wasn't used for.
Yeah. It was American. It was American, I think.
Ah, right. And they coloured it and flavoured it so that they could sell it to the public with a health label. And there's an amazing researcher, Joanna Budvig, who was saying, even in the 1950s, a German researcher, that we would ruin the health of our populations if we continued to feed them with these margarines. And I suppose when I watch that advert, I'm also so horrified by how stereotypical and patriarchal it is.
Subservient and subservient.
Oh dear, terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, oh sorry, not sure that advertising, it's got a lot to answer for, hasn't it? But if we have a look at these different classes of fats, we can see that even saturated fats are needed to a degree in the brain for the brain structure. And what I'll do is I'll compare healing fats, if you like, versus fats that kill. And there is in fact a textbook by Udo Erasmus called Fats That Heal and Fats That Kill. Hey, voila, there we go. It's quite a tome, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I've only used it for one essay, and it's very small print.
Yes, yes, and very very.
It looks
a lot of chemical information.
Yeah.
Yeah, regarding the fats. So we'll start with saturated fats and the animal versus the vegetable. So of course you've got butter and lard, and it's interesting because I used to do reflexology in a nursing home several years ago, and there was one lady who had been in the nursing home for some years. I think she was in her early 90s, and apparently she ate lard every single day. She had it spread on her bread, dripping rather than butter. And she obviously had all her marbles, and she wasn't physically in great shape, but mentally in a good state. And also butter. The thing about lard and butter is that they are known to be very stable at high temperatures. And this is why, to a degree, they have a reputation to being good cooking fats. So all of these fats, in fact, are solid at room temperature, which means that if we ingest a lot of them, then if they are being used as ingredients in our membranes, which is where fats are used, certainly it's one place where they're used, then we are also sitting there to a large degree going solid. They are less, they have a lesser tendency to go rancid as well, because they are much more stable, and so they last longer. So vegetable versions of saturated fats are things like palm oil, which has a terrible reputation, as you know, from farming in the Amazon and so on. And also coconut oil, for example, which is solid at room temperature, but does very quickly become liquid without, you know, too much of a raise in temperature. So then examples of our unsaturated fats, things like omega-9, monounsaturated fats, are, you know, are olive oil. And we've also got things like our polyunsaturated fats, such as sunflower and sesame. Now, the thing about all of these oils is that they are so-called described as unstable, because they are liquid at room temperature rather than being solid. So if you can imagine, there's more movement between their molecules. And this is why they're all best kept in dark glass, because they are incredibly sensitive to light, also heat, and being oxidized by being exposed to air. Now, generally speaking, if manufacturers are going to stop spoilage, we can use antioxidants. And in fact, one of the fish oils I recommend uses lemon oil in order to prevent oxidation. That's one by Cytoplan, which is a very good quality marine fish oil. But manufacturers tend to hydrogenate oil, so they will add water to it and heat it to make sure that the water mixes in. Now, when that happens, the structure of the unsaturated oils, for example, sunflower oil in flora, is changed by the heating, and that alters the way that the body processes it. And Shelley's absolutely right in sort of saying that, you know, you often find that animals and insects will not touch these things. And in fact, flies, generally speaking, will not touch margarine because they seem to know that it is only a step removed from plastic in terms of its oil production processes.
If something's hydrogenated, does it have to say it on the label?
It does have to say it.
Right. Okay.
And in actual fact, that's why, because manufacturers got wise to realizing that people had become more aware of the process of hydrogenation, that they've started using different processes now. And so there are two new ways that the industry modifies fats now, something called interesterification, which chops up the free fatty acids in triglycerides and rearranges them to make sure that they're able to become solid and form something like a margarine. And also fractionation, which separates out the hard stearin, which is like a waxy fat in palm oil, for example, which is then mixed with softer esterified oils. It's a mouthful, that. And again, helps to make a spreadable thing, or is used, for example, in the production of things like biscuits and cakes and so on that manufacturers make. And you don't necessarily avoid it with organic production, because although they won't allow interesterified products, they do allow fractionation. Margarines, unfortunately, still do contain these trans fatty acids. And what trans fatty acids are is that when the oil is heated, it makes the fat twist. And that is what a trans fatty acid basically is. And if you can imagine, a twisted fat is carcinogenic, and it's what the well, most of the nutrition industry describes as the twisted sister of the essential fatty acid. Slight joke there, sorry, nutritionist joke, really bad. So essential fats are basically our omega-3 and omega-6. Omega-9 is not essential, because if you have omega-3 and omega-6 in enough quantity, you can make your omega-9 anyway. So we don't need olive oil, but it is a lovely high antioxidant food. So omega-3 sources, what I'd like to say is that omega-3's full name is chemically alpha-linolenic acid, and you find the non-broken down form of omega-3 in golden linseeds and brown linseeds, to a slightly lesser degree, in walnuts and in pumpkin seeds. Now, again, omega-6, its chemical name is linoleic acid, and you find the unbroken down form of it in sunflower seeds, sesame seeds. It's also in pumpkin seeds and hemp seeds. And there is some omega-6 in linseeds as well. And in several of the nuts, there'll be a bit of omega-6. Now, the thing is that your liver then has to break down those oils into the next stages in order to absorb them and use them. And that is asking quite a lot of the liver, as we'll see. So the next stage on from alpha-linolenic acid in omega-3 breakdown is eicosapentaenoic acid, which is mostly called EPA. Now, the lovely thing about oily fish is that they have already broken down the omega-3 into EPA and DHA for us. And so that's why when we consume an oily fish capsule, or when we consume oily fish, the omega-3 fats are very, very accessible. And what you'll notice is there's a little breakdown process between EPA and DHA called DPA. Now, DHA is something like, is it docahedronoic acid or something? Please don't ask me. You know, it's one of those things where, like the eicosapentaenoic, I really should have it in its full form, because I never refer to it as that. I always say DHA. I would highly recommend that you do the same. And DPA equally. Now, they are what is known as, they break down into also our prostaglandins, which are our feel-good, short-acting tissue hormones, and they are anti-inflammatory, which is the PGE3 there, which is why I'm saying it's good. So if we look at omega-6 breakdown pathway, linoleic acid in its full form in sunflower and sesame, broken down form, we've got things like evening primrose oil and starflower oil as well, such as your borage flowers. And then you've got another breakdown process, arachidonic acid, which is the next, another stage, and arachidonic acid, camelinoleic acid and the linoleic acid are anti-inflammatory. They're a good prostaglandin, which is all the PGE means. I do apologise for the abbreviation. The arachidonic acid in meat and dairy can be inflammatory if taken in far too high quantities. Anything you'd like to ask me about that while we're on it?
Looking at this, it's obviously, unless you eat oily fish, it's difficult to get omega-3, isn't it? And the omega-6, if you don't eat, if you're not having meat and dairy, again, it's something you've probably got to supplement.
Well, one way is, for example, with something like the muesli, to always make sure there's a good selection of ground seeds in with it, because that will introduce a decent amount of the omega-3 and 6 in on your breakfast.
So do we grind them because then it's more accessible?
Yes. Oh, yes. Particularly with things like your golden linseeds and your sesame, because they're so tiny that generally speaking, your teeth will not crunch them down.
But we don't use milled ones. We grind them.
Grind them fresh. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Because they go rancid within about 15 minutes of grinding. So you need to grind them, put them on your breakfast, eat.
Right. So you don't soak them overnight then?
No, well, you can soak them overnight. So now, if you're going to grind them, I would suggest to you that you don't necessarily need to soak them particularly, because you ground them into such a fine powder. When you are going to eat them whole, so for example, with a muesli, it can be nice to soak in pumpkin, sunflower, even golden linseeds and sesame if you want, overnight in with the oats, if you're having a muesli, and get a little bit of a subtle crunch in the breakfast as well. But you will probably access more 3 and 6 when you grind them. And if you're making a smoothie, you can soak them overnight and give them a good rinse, put them in the smoothie and whiz them up, so that you've soaked them and you've got some enzyme production there as well. Sorry, does that answer your question, Shelley?
Yeah. I'm just, I never really know the balance between 3, 6 and 9. And I know 3 is obviously the one that's more easily accessible, isn't it? But then there's omega-7 or something, there's all sorts of them, isn't there?
Yes, we will have a chat about omega-7 in a later session, actually. And again, it's having these two basic essential omega-3 fats and 6 fat that you can make the others from. However, the breakdown pathways can become less efficient for various reasons, and that's what can happen in terms of omega-7.
You can see how easily, I would imagine most people don't get enough of this.
It's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I'm thinking myself. I mean, and you just, unless you take a supplement, it's be hard to get this.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, how many portions? Sorry, Susie.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, how many portions of oily fish should we be eating a week? 2?
I would suggest at least 2 if you can. Yeah. If not 3, 2 to 3 would be lovely. Combined somewhere between lunch and evening meal.
So that's like the mackerel and the salmon.
Yes, mackerel, salmon. Yeah, well, we're going to certainly have a look at the list. Yeah, and I've got some handouts for you as well on this.
So can we just revisit the muesli again, Susie? So I've been soaking my oats and pumpkin and sunflower seeds. So really, you could soak the oats and the almonds and the raisins but not the sunflower and pumpkin, but grind those up and add them to the other soaked ingredients?
Yes, you could. Yes, you'd get
Would
some
that-
omega-6 that way. Yeah.
You'd access more
And
6
3 from
doing
the
it that
pumpkin.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More 6 because there's a small amount of 3 in the
Yeah.
pumpkin.
Yeah.
I mean that they're not as fantastic a source as golden linseeds.
Right.
And hemp, there's some omega-3 in too, but it's
Mm.
mainly 6.
Mm.
Most of the seeds are mainly 6, apart from linseeds, and chia is another one
Oh yes.
that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
omega-3 high.
And are we talking about the same coffee grinder with all this then, or?
Or a mortar and pestle.
Oh no, definitely a coffee grinder. We're going to be out there for hours.
Get one up.
No,
All right.
definitely a coffee grinder would be fabulous, but I would keep it separate from, if you do grind coffee, I would keep
Yeah.
a separate one.
Mm.
Because coffee can be quite overpowering
Mm.
in a grinder.
Okay.
So if we're desperately lacking in the EFAs,
Yeah.
what are the symptoms going to be?
Oh, well, this is where we're coming to
Right.
what you might notice for sure. So the reason they're called essential fatty acids is because they are absolutely essential. And the picture we've got there is of a membrane. And about 50% of your cell membrane should be fats.
Mm.
And a good proportion of that would be lovely as, some essential fats. And I'll explain the difference in their makeup to saturated fats. So the omega-3 and 6 we can't make from other foods, as we said. So we do need to take them on board in order to have them in the body. And they are required for so many biological processes that I'm going to give you some examples of this evening.
Mm.
Fat can be burned as a fuel, like we're saying, it can be broken down and used like glucose as a fuel, but they aren't just used for fuel. They literally are part of the building blocks of your membranes in your body. Hugely important. Now, the thing about omega-3 and omega-6, because they are unsaturated, they have one straight tail and one kinky tail in their makeup. And this is a bit of a funny thing to describe, but I'd have to show you the chemical makeup in order to show you the shape of them. Whereas saturated fats are like little regimented soldiers in pairs next to each other. So the structure of a saturated fat, this is why they sit so densely together, because it's two molecules joined together, whereas the saturated fat is more open in its structure. And that means that if you have two essential fats next door to each other, for example, in a membrane, you get a bigger gap in the membrane, which makes the membrane more flexible and fluid and flowing. Whereas a saturated high membrane will be very solid and structured and maybe not allow the same fluidity in and out of the cell. Can you get a picture of that?
Yeah.
Certainly, I think I've got it on another cell anyway. Slide. So around up until the 1850s, they reckon there was probably about a 1-to-1 ratio consumed between omega-3 and omega-6.
Mm.
So the ratio of fatty acids consumed was far more appropriate for the human body. And then, unfortunately, with the change in diet, with the Industrial Revolution, when again, quite a lot of cheap foods were introduced into towns and cities to feed workers very, very quickly, gradually over the last 150, 170 years, that has shifted to a 1 in 20 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, which means that we have far too much omega-6 coming in the diet. And that has, will have a huge impact on our mental health, and also, just even thinking of mood and, cognition, those two things, huge impact on brain health for a start off. It is a huge imbalance to take place over a short time. So it's not like evolution has taken place in that time over thousands and thousands of years. It's that our bodies aren't really equipped to assimilate fats in that ratio. Also, unfortunately, with the way that we've farmed farm animals in particular, there is a reduced level of essential fatty acids in the animals that humans consume. So when we eat animals that are grass-fed, there is a far higher ratio of omega-3 in their muscle tissue and tissue that is consumed by humans, far higher in omega-3 than there would be if they're fed these, sort of processed foods, manufactured foods.
But even organic meats can be just fed feed,
That's
can't
true.
they?
That's true, yes.
And most animals are in from October to March. They don't see any grass, do they?
No. It's really important, if you can, to find a good local organic farm who has its animals out to grass most of the year, if possible. And certainly, I think with something like apparently Kerrygold has the longest amount of days that their animals are grass-fed pasture, and I can't remember if it's well over 300. I think Yo Valley even is slightly less than Kerrygold.
Waitrose say on their advertising that their animals get 265 days.
Right.
I noticed that the other day when I was in there, and I was thinking, well, there's still 100 days where
that's still 3 months indoors.
Yeah, where I'm thinking, well, what are you bragging about, really?
Yes.
So it just shows you how bad it must be for the others.
Absolutely.
And when you go abroad, into Europe, you never see animals out.
No, that's interesting, isn't it?
You don't, if you just think that you very rarely see, you don't see cows out. It's particularly like in Italy or in France. You just don't see it. They're in. No. They're in all the time.
No, I mean, I have seen cows out in Brittany.
Maybe in Brittany, but with the point from central France, you just don't see them.
No, and it is a huge farming country, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing is apparently the value of the grass. Once the light goes, the value of the grass isn't enough. That's what they say, and obviously the fields need to rest. But and I always feel sorry for those cows at Glastonbury because they only get out once in 5 years.
Yes, yeah. There is a lovely American farmer. I think he's in his 70s now, called Joel somebody. But he talks about how he reckons that the huge focus on veganism now is going to be a problem environmentally, because and in animal ecology, if farming continues, because he said that if you farm well, you have a constant cycling, so that the animals are moving from pasture to pasture, and the cows are leaving waste that the chickens then come in and peck through and get the insects from as well, and everything moves round in a cycle, and the crops follow the pastures, and each of the various aspects of farming feeds the others. And it's a fascinating way of looking at it, and the way that they treat, they're so humane to their animals as well, because they get a different kind of welfare and living. So one thing you know, we were just talking a little bit about with the membrane fats, our monounsaturated fatty acids and our polyunsaturated fatty acids are liquid at room temperature, and so there's more flow there, and they also can encourage, they can lower blood clotting. So that is one of the properties of essential fatty acids, whereas saturated fats and damaged fats will tend to promote more stickiness of blood cells. And so there's a story by an anaesthetist who had a gentleman come in for his blood tests, and he was a bit concerned about him because he said he was coming in for heart surgery soon, and he could see how much clumping there was going on in his blood. And he said to him, I really need to take a blood test from you before we do your operation. Anyway, this gentleman came in for his operation, and he was due for this heart procedure, and the anaesthetist had his bloods taken, and when he looked in the test tube, the blood was virtually solid with fat. And he had to say, you know, I can't anesthetize this man. I cannot go ahead with this operation. And they had a chat with the gentleman afterwards, and he said, well, I was thinking that I would probably need to change my diet after I had my operation. And so he said, I went and had a blowout on McDonald's, and I had this, that, and the other today, and really, yeah,
Just
propped himself up to the death with fats of a very challenging kind. So if you think about the fat molecules in your bloodstream, you know, triglycerides, do you want them to flow like oil or clump together like butter in your body? You know, so it's thinking that really we want our blood cells to flow freely. And I know we've sort of touched on that topic from the point of view, I think, well, no, we haven't yet, so I'll be quiet. We'll come back to that. So looking at foods that do contain essential fats, and why, you know, other reasons why we should be eating essential fatty acids, and having a look at what happens when we're short of them. So omega-3, we've already mentioned, we've got golden linseeds, and they are somewhat higher than brown linseeds. So I always recommend to people, if they can, to get hold of the golden ones. And then you've got things like walnuts and pumpkin seeds, which have some, chia seeds, a little bit in things like avocado, and green leafy vegetables have a nice amount of omega-3. And this is why when animals are grass-fed, they also have, you know, with the green leaves, as it were, they have a higher ratio of omega-3 in their tissues. Then if we look at our broken down form, EPA and DHA in fish, we've got things like salmon, trout, mackerel, herring, sardines, pilchards, kippers and eels. Don't know if anybody eats eels. Whitebait, tuna, I tend to recommend that the fresh is high in omega-3 rather than the canned, because a lot of the tuna canneries, I think, have the omega-3 collected for supplementation, because tuna is, you know, fresh tuna is really high in omega-3. Small fish.
Sorry. Go. You know where you're saying like trout and mackerel and stuff. If it's smoked, smoking isn't very good for food absorption, is it? But a lot of like there's a lot of smoked fish around, isn't there? That we, you know, like smoked salmon and stuff. Does that still have the EFA in it?
There will still be a percentage of omega-3, but it will be much lower because of the treatment that it's sort of undergoing in the smoking process. So yes, it will lower it. So the fresher the better, really. And then you've got little fish like anchovies and sprats, and things like swordfish and carp, which mightn't be so common in most people's diets.
I've never seen carp available to eat.
No, I can't say I have, but you do get the odd fisherwoman even. I do know a fisherwoman. And whitebait, of course, are tiny as well, and not something that we might necessarily see so much to prepare ourselves. So omega-6 sources, sesame and sunflower we've already mentioned, hemp we mentioned, and again they do have some omega-3 in them as well. And just thinking about hemp in connection with, of course, cannabis. And it's really interesting that, actually, I'll hang fire and come back to that. Because, of course, cannabis oil has become very, very popular now as a cure-all for a lot of things. And, of course, there is cannabis as in marijuana used by people who, have a habit there. And so things like pine nuts and pistachios are a nice source of a little bit of omega-6 as well. Omega-9, we've got your oleic acid. Again, you've got olives, like we said. There are some good peanut butters out there now that are high in oleic acid. So you can buy peanuts that are high in oleic acid. And less saturated fat than some varieties. Almonds, cashews, pecans have a decent amount of omega-9. Nuts generally are lovely because you've got, you've got some B vitamins, and you've got some nice levels of magnesium, levels of minerals like magnesium in there. Generally speaking, I think it's better to get a variety of nuts and nuts and seeds, in fact, rather than eating the same one all the time. To eat a mix of them and get a different variety of minerals and fats.
Susie, I thought to get the best out of nuts, they had to be in their shells.
Ideally, that would be...
And that's so hard, isn't it? I mean,
it is very hard, because they tend only to be sold in shells at Christmas time. And so what I tend to recommend to people is that they at least put them in the fridge salad box in the bottom of the fridge as soon as they arrive. And if not, you could even possibly freeze as an alternative if you've bought in bulk. I tend to try and buy small quantities and keep in the fridge and use and keep a fast turnover, so that what I'm replacing them with is fresher.
Susie, do you buy them in places like Holland and Barrett?
I do buy a few of their organic.
I'm really sorry I have to take this, okay?
I'll be back. You please carry on.
Okay, thank you.
Have you heard of a company called Tree Harvest?
I have, yes.
Yeah, because
Yes,
when I was doing my raw food dessert thing, I used to order loads of stuff off Tree Harvest, but they used to do like nuts that you could buy, but that was more in bulk actually. It was more, but if you're doing a lot of cashew nut cream and stuff, it.
Yes, yeah, very handy to have, good amount. That's right.
It's true, I thought it was.
And so, yes, I think it depends on how often you're going to use that nut.
How do you know how old the nut is before you buy it? I mean, this is the thing. It could be like, what's the shelf life on nuts? I mean, sometimes they do taste really off when they They don't always taste that.
Don't always
fresh.
taste that fresh. No. No, I think it's a really good question. I must admit, I don't know what the shelf life is. I suppose I do tend to try. I get things like Crazy Jacks from Ocado.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
In a little
because you,
pack.
yeah, you get about 100 grams,
Yeah.
and they tend to have a good date on,
Yeah.
because they are, have got a good level of turnover, which means that you generally tend to get them fairly fresh. And I would be really careful that if I haven't used some nuts, I will check the date and clear them out if they've gone past, because they're not going to be. There's not going to be much nutritional value left, really.
No, exactly.
Mm.
Okay, sorry. Just
No, thank you.
Same thing with olives, isn't it? You've got to have fresh olives, and sometimes, you can. I get them from the farm shop, and sometimes they're in those big dishes, and you just think, how long have they been here?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a really good question. So, prostaglandins. Now, the gentleman that discovered prostaglandins first found them in the prostate, and so he called them prostaglandins because they were from a gland and it was the prostate, and they are very short-lived, short-acting hormone-like substances. So they do things like help improve fertility and conception. They are naturally anti-inflammatory. They help reduce inflammation in the body. They help your body to raise its immunity and fight infection. They help, like we were saying, short-acting tissue hormones that help keep blood clotting at a minimum. They help you regulate your blood pressure. Many functions in the body. They help blood sugar as well. And they're also known by the Americans as feel-good hormones, because there are some of them that have an effect on mood. And we'll have a look at neurotransmitters and their effect on mood as well. And so essential fats have got a big role to play on natural feel-good. Now, if we don't have enough of these natural prostaglandins being produced by our intake of omega-3 and omega-6, then and omega-3 in particular, then we tend to crave what we call fake prostaglandins. And what's happening there is that these fake prostaglandins mostly are triggering some kind of opiate receptor behavior in the brain, which means that you get a temporary feel-good buzz from them. They are things like caffeine in tea and coffee, like the same chemical family in chocolate. Sugar and wheat are two that trigger opiate behavior, as we've mentioned before. Alcohol and nicotine. Now, if we are somewhat deficient in our omega-3, then we might crave any of the ones listed. If we have become extremely depleted, and I will at this stage mention teenagers, because when you're in your teens, you have a huge amount of frontal brain development taking place. And the frontal brain is about good versus bad, right versus wrong. Am I making a decision that is a yes here or a no? It's about your judgment, really, your ability to judge something. And so for, say, a teenager, it would be, well, shall I go rob in the shop with me mates, or shall I not? Shall I ride my bike home and go and do my homework? Something like that. And so then if a teenager is particularly depleted, or a young adult depleted in essential fatty acids, and they happen to try a harder drug like marijuana, cocaine, heroin, etc., the opiate receptor triggering from that may well set up an addiction. And you often find sometimes that teenagers, I mean, the lovely Henry Enfield and his character that he plays as a teen is a classic example of a lack of feel good and a sort of bolshy, moody attitude. Joanna Budvig, in her lovely little book about essential fats, the title of which is escaping me right at this minute, describes visiting a mother who had cancer with 2 young children, and these children were sent out of the room from where the mother was discussing changing her diet with Joanna Budvig for bad behaviour. And the little girl, though, had overheard something that Joanna Budvig was saying, and as she, having been called back into the room by her mother and asked to show Ms. Budvig to the door, asked her, "What should I eat so that I can be a good girl?"
Oh.
Because it's that behavior, that making good connections so that you're able to make good decisions about what to do through childhood, through teens, through adulthood. We make more sense of the world when we make good neural connections, if you like. Does that make sense? Is that okay?
You just look at what kids are eating today, and they know that they're craving sugar so much, aren't they?
Yes.
More than ever.
Yeah. It's really interesting that they did a study with rats, and they, on one cage they had a water bottle. Sorry, I've probably already said this. And on the other cage they had a bottle of alcohol, and a bottle of water. Oh no, sorry, alcohol and water on both cages. Sorry. And then they gave the first cage of rats a good diet, and the second cage of rats had junk food. Now, the cage A, the rats only drank the water, but in cage B, with the junk diet, the rats drank the alcohol, not the water. Because if you are depleted, you want something that is going to naturally make you feel good. There is no judgment around that. Every single human being wants to feel in a good mood. Yeah.
So interesting, isn't it, that?
Yeah. And so then if we go back to our cells, your cell membranes, it's not only necessary to have essential fats in there to create, some open spaces for nutrients to flow in, for waste to leave. It's also good because some of your cellular functions, such as cell signaling, for example, when your neurotransmitters like serotonin for serenity, dopamine for get up and go, anandamine for, again, feel good, you need to have the right shape in your cell membranes. And let's say that 2 essential fatty acids next door to each other make this shape. You then want the boat-shaped neurotransmitter to be able to chug into place and dock into place in the membrane, so that you can actually trigger those feel-good focus and motivation type feelings. So also, at a cellular level, really important for the formation of our tissues and organs. For example, I think I probably mentioned when we've spoken about digestion, your goblet cells in the membrane that produce all the mucus, if you like, or watery fluids, for example, that help everything pass through your digestive system. And goblet cells need omega-3 to be able to form well and be available to you to produce that fluid. Also, essential fats can be part of our metabolic processes and our ability to for oxidation, which obviously is where your oxygen is oxidizing. You want to be able to renew that oxygen, if you like, to reuse, and essential fats can be part of that process. So then what people can find is that they have higher energy when they consume enough omega-3 and the right ratio to omega-6, that their stamina is higher, and that they have a decreased recovery time, because omega-3 particularly helps your muscles recover after exercise. And so, you know, if we want to avoid that achy muscle feeling, it's having the right amount of magnesium and good omega-3 levels. Now, this goes really for inside skin as well as outside skin, because your essential fats moisturize your skin. They literally sort of oil it. And so with the right kind of oils, you don't really want a lot of saturated fats in your skin, making your skin go solid. You know, you want it to be fairly, you want your skin to be quite fluid, really. So also, because of the lack of inflammation with essential fats, you know, they're anti-inflammatory naturally, you're reducing the risk of acne, of eczema, of psoriasis and other skin conditions if they're in the correct ratio. So you've got little fat sort of supplies in the skin, which acts as it acts as an insulating layer, but it will also be part of secretions to keep the skin moisturized, along with hydration. So from an essential fat perspective with digestion, we've already mentioned the goblet cells. Again, if you have strong cell membranes in the right proportions in the digestive tract itself, it can help prevent leaky gut, which will help lower the risk of allergies, which unfortunately then contribute to autoimmune problems and inflammation generally. Sorry, I'm just going to have a slurp 2 cheers.
Susie, will you just give a quick definition of leaky gut?
Yes.
If you can.
What I'd like you to do is sort of think about actually where we talked last week about an open gut. Because a baby's gut is potentially leaky because the cells are more open from each other, which allows in early breastfeeding for antibodies from the mother, which are a larger molecule, to pass through the walls of the gut straight into the bloodstream. Whereas if a baby's early weaned, things like proteins from wheat, from dairy, can get through the gaps in the gut and straight into the bloodstream, where they contribute to an autoimmune response and inflammation. And that basically it is a leaky gut where you've got something like wheat coming in, and the constituents, the proteins in it, open up the gut too much, and create an environment where you've got proteins that shouldn't be going straight into the bloodstream because they should be broken down into their constituent amino acids, leaching through, and water leaching back in, contributing to a diarrhea type picture.
Because a lot of times, you know, it's a people say, "Oh, I've got a leaky gut," but lots of people say that, you know, or you know, they say, "Oh, if somebody said I've got a leaky gut," but how do you know when you haven't? Presumably, you don't have the symptoms of diarrhea, and you're just eating a better diet.
You generally have the allergic responses as well.
Right. Okay.
And there is a fantastic book actually. Oh gosh, I think is it Dr. Natasha Bryce Campbell or something like that, about leaky gut. I will have a look for the title.
Because
and send that
I
out.
read somewhere that, you know, there is a link between leaky gut in young kids and autism.
Absolutely, yes. In fact, I was going to say that's one of the main topics in her book. That you can reduce the symptoms of autism, if not, you know, bring the child back to a large degree, rescue from the intensity of it. Yeah, can make an enormous difference.
So do you think that's one of the reasons we've got so many children with autism? You know, the autistic spectrum suddenly is massive, isn't it? And it's diet. A lot of it could be diet.
Some of it is diet. I'm probably going to sound very contentious now, aren't I? The rates of autism have increased several-fold since the more vaccinations that we give a child each year. And so, for example, the example I can give you is that in Japan, I forget which decade it was, they decided not to vaccinate children at all until the age of 2. And their rates of autism dropped exponentially, enormously. Because there's no doubt about the fact that the vaccines or some of the products that are put into the vaccines cause autoimmune problems. And when that situation occurs, children with autism consequently find it very difficult to digest wheat and dairy and are enormously better without it. Dr. Paul Shattuck at Newcastle University did an enormous amount of research on the benefits of wheat and dairy being cut out of autistic children's diets. They had extremely good results.
Thank you.
Fascinating.
Yeah, really interesting. This is almost like another section, isn't it, to prostaglandins and this.
Yes.
This is like just skimming the top. We need to do another
yes
another course.
Yes. There is so much really. Yeah. Because you've always got other causative factors.
Yeah.
And so it's looking, homeopaths talk about susceptibility. So why would one child with that vaccine become autistic and another child not, for example.
Mm.
My youngest sister, she's 9.5 years younger than me, and after the second exposure to the DPT, diphtheria tetanus pertussis vaccine, she started with epilepsy. Now, the older three of us did not. But it's what caused that susceptibility is the question. And because of the risk of that, that is why my children were never vaccinated, and nor have my grandchildren been. And so I think one of the things that's come up with this COVID vaccine is that they've mentioned allergies, and that people with allergies should not have the vaccine. Because the risk is very clear, because the immune system is already very, very challenged. And when you put something like aluminium and dead animal tissue into a product like a vaccine, then you're and formaldehyde and all sorts of other things that really should not be in a body, then you are going to set up a situation where you may cause a problem.
So are they recommending people with autoimmune diseases like, say, MS to have the vaccine, or are they just...
The only thing I've heard is that they're recommending that people with allergies don't have it.
Right, okay.
And pregnant women.
And pregnant women, yeah.
Wow.
The question is it better to raise your immune system to such a pitch that you do not catch something, or is it better to put something chemical in the body that is supposed to prevent you getting it? I'll leave that one with you. So cardiovascular health. Essential fats are used to transport cholesterol, and they help lower triglycerides, which is a broken down fat found in the bloodstream. As we already said, they make platelets, your blood cells, less sticky, so that your blood flows freely, and they lower your blood pressure naturally. That's one of your prostaglandin roles. So omega-3 generally is now given out to some patients in some countries, because the drug companies sell it to the medical profession, their own brands. So what about essential fats and emotional mood? They help to lift the mood. They can ease depression, and they also help us cope with stress. And what I'd like you to think about is that EPA, which is the partially broken down form of omega-3, is really useful for the software of the brain. And so it's about mood, it's about focus and concentration, it's about memory, all of the things that we have to do all the time. They're the running functions of our brain. So anything that you expect your brain to do on a daily basis as a role is the software of your brain, and EPA will feed that. So you have to either break that down, or you obtain it from a food where it is already broken down. Whereas DHA, along with AA, is used in the structure or hardware of the two hemispheres of your brain. So like this flipping laptop, I'm just trying to think what the comparison would be. The hardware is all the bits and pieces inside it, and the software are things like PowerPoint and Zoom, you know, that we're using now, that we're Windows and all that business. Now, what they found in a study with brain health is that because EPA is about the software, it's about helping create good mood, they when they separate it out and they gave it in studies, it did not, it helped reduce depression. Whereas in studies where they used solely DHA, which of course is about the structure of the brain, it did not reduce depression when used on its own. However, if you think about Alzheimer's and dementia, where the structure of the brain is discovered in Oxford University, and conditions like MS as well, where neural system insulation starts to be eroded, they found that both DHA and EPA are extremely useful. So you need the DHA there to replenish the structure of the brain, because they can actually see in brains of people with Alzheimer's and dementia that the structure of the brain is depleted. So one of the things about the heart as well, which I didn't mention in the slide before, is that it helps with the rhythm of the heart. So it helps stabilize the mechanism by which you create that electrical potential of the heart and prevents arrhythmia, stabilizes your heart rate and beat. So just as you know, another slide with regard to the brain, creativity, hugely fed by essential fats. So if we want a creative, imaginative, you know, baby, child, teenager, adult, nation, then we really need to feed it the essential fats. Because you can stuff as many books into a brain as you like, but if you can't, if you don't have the ingredients there to understand it, then we're not going to get very far. So, you know, it can be very easy to sort of think of education as being where you sort of you sort of download this information to the child, but it's, well, does the child have the ingredients coming in whereby they can actually digest, assimilate and use that information? And because we don't really want them to just parrot off a load of information that they've remembered, we want them to be able to use formula that they've been given and so on.
And what about menopausal women? Because I mean, we all think we've got brain mush, haven't we? So obviously we think it's estrogen, but presumably depletion of EFAs is just the same. It's the same thing.
Yes, that's right. And I think could I come back to that, Shelley? Because that's a really good point. Yes, I will come back to that. Thank you. So focus and concentration, like we've already said, and get up and go, your dopamine, your motivation, that wanting to do something new, to learn something new, to go somewhere new, is part of our ability to dock dopamine. EFAs also help transport these essential minerals like our magnesium, calcium, selenium, iron, copper, zinc, and especially they help to keep our bones and teeth strong. because of the transportation of essential minerals to bones and teeth. If you think about the nucleus of your cell, every single cell DNA is held in that nucleus, and it's like your reproductive system. And your reproductive system for, you know, the whole body, and also inside the nucleus. Inside the nucleus, you have a double bilipid layer. And when I say bilipid, I mean twice the amount of lipids in the membrane, holding your DNA. So they are actually holding, if you like, in a protective nest, the very ability that you have for your cell to replicate itself and make a new one. And of course, just thinking back momentarily, that if we acknowledge, which I think is becoming more widely acknowledged in the alternative field, just going back to that a moment, that RNA virus are something that is made in your own body by cells that have established how to repair themselves, and the other cells in the body, how to repair the DNA. And, you know, to have the ability to make those and to then rebuild the DNA is also connected with our immunity. EFAs are naturally anti-inflammatory, so it's not that, let's say you take in some oil from fish and it literally oils your joints, for example, if there's any arthritic picture there. It's that it helps you produce anti-inflammatory substances in the body that contribute to a lowering of inflammation. So it can be enormously helpful for inflammatory conditions, but particularly things like arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. In terms of babies, within the first 3 months of birth, your baby's visual system is still developing, and it's really important that the essential fats are there in mum's diet through the breast milk to finish developing that visual system and get good eyesight really early on. What this chart shows is the connection between seafood consumption and rates of bipolar spectrum disorders. And so what you'll see is that in countries where they have a very high seafood consumption, and you can see that Iceland is the one that has the highest consumption, they have no bipolar spectrum disorders, no manic depression, no depression, this kind of thing. Whereas somewhere like Germany, which has a fairly oh, I've lost Jane.
Yeah, you have. Where's she gone?
Fairly shocking diet.
Yeah, but you know, like Iceland, and they, when you think that the amount of light they get is really limited, isn't it?
It is, yes, that's right.
And so you're saying, you know, that's interesting that just the fish alone is actually, you think they'd be more prone to bipolar because of the dark.
Because of the dark, that's right, and sad, yes. And I have got a presentation on SAD, which I can perhaps squeeze in separately somewhere soon.
I think we're going to be having another course.
Yeah, it is a whole sort of thing on its own. And so
where's Jane gone?
Yes, I'm just wondering, is it possible to contact her?
Yeah, I'll just say, where are you?
because I know she has had a problem on the laptop before.
Yeah.
Or is it? Oh gosh, have I gabbed on it? Oh God, I've really gabbed on. I wonder if does her husband need it for another presentation?
No, no, where are you? I just put, where are you?
Oh, here she is.
Oh, she's back.
Okay.
Yeah. Is she?
There we go.
Oh,
Hello.
where were
You
you?
had to go onto your phone.
Yeah, my battery went flat, or rather, the laptop battery went flat.
That's it. It's only the laptop.
Yeah, because it's not my machine, I didn't realise that the battery was going flat, and all of a sudden everything just went. But anyway, sorry, I'm back with you now.
Hello. And also, there is a huge connection between. There was a long-term study done in Bristol called the ALSPAC study, ALSPAC, I think, for several years, and they found that where mothers had a good intake of seafood, more than 1,200 grams per week. Sorry, no, 1 minute. Was that 1,200? Oh, I'm not going to quote the amount because I can't quite remember it. But where the mothers ate more than the amount that was recommended by the government's own nutritional board, and the reason that it was limited by the nutritional board that recommends, UK diet, is because of the risk of mercury poisoning. Where they found that where parents ate more than that, their children by the age of 5 had better cognitive abilities.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about the Icelandic diet being high in omega-3 is that essential fats are protective to the brain of mercury. So they will help pick up heavy metals and carry them out of the body. And so also, I don't know if I've put this slide in here because it's one of my baby weaning slides. Let's have a look. No, I didn't. Just to mention that obviously baby brain and pregnancy amnesia and what's the other term that's used, or baby brain, what's this, another one, anyway, there's me struggling to remember something. Keep taking the essential fats, is that you know, by taking in by creating a baby and by breastfeeding a baby, but certainly at the end of a pregnancy, without essential fats in her diet, a mum can be 22% depleted in her brain of essential fatty acids, which will have an impact on her memory, on her focus and concentration, on her ability to function mentally, and also equally, I have used tables in the past where you've got connections between seafood consumption and of course postnatal depression.
Yeah.
Because it's so important where mums, have a tendency to depression, to think about bringing in some omega-3 foods. So then what I'd like you to think about for a moment is that if we were to take all of the oil out of your body and drain it out through your big toe, and it covered an area of land, it would look a little bit like an oily puddle, as shown on the slide. And it would be a covering for 10 football pitches.
Really?
Okay.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the other thing I'd love you to think about is that when you have ample essential fats in the body, you actually complete hydration, because you are then, if you have good cell membranes with the right ratio of fats in, those fats will hold the water that is needed in your cells. Whereas if you do not have a good fat ratio in the cells, you will not hold the water in your body as efficiently. And so there's just a picture there showing a kind of 2D representation of that, which is when you first pour oil into water, it will kind of bloop around a bit and then it will whoosh up to the surface, and you get a surface of oil on water. And this is what you want around your watery inside of your cell. You want a nice oil-rich membrane that will hold everything in there. Very quick look at processed and damaged fats. Margarines, commercially baked and fried foods, there aren't any nutritional benefits. The health risks, however, are much increased because they are carcinogenic when the fats are twisted. But the benefit for manufacturers is that they're cheaper and that they get a longer shelf life out of them. So hydrogenated, insta-esterified, fractionated trans fats, artificially saturated and twisted. I won't crack that joke again. You've got twisted double bonds basically, and it means that you've got hydrogen atoms on the wrong side of carbon chains. And if you, I haven't put any chemical pictures up, but it would make sense of that if you saw it. So hydrogenated fats act like saturated fats in the body, except if anything, I would probably say to you, choose saturated fat over a hydrogenated fat or a intra-esterified or a fractionated, because they are linked to heart disease. They block, because you've only got so many fat receptors in your intestines, if you have them coming in, they will block the uptake of your essential fatty acids. And that's the last thing that you want, because you want those nutritional absorption sites to be taking up the fats that your body really needs. They also interfere with your cell metabolism because, again, they reduce the ability of the cell to pick up the signaling from hormones, to pick up the signaling from neurotransmitters, and they may even damage your brain or nerve cell membranes, because your nerve cell and brain membranes have a really, they really need the omega-3 in them for your brain to function, as you would like. So trans fatty acids raise blood cholesterol, bad cholesterol levels. They reduce, now have I got that the right way around? Have I done this slide right? Just bear with me a second. Yes, that's right. They raise bad cholesterol levels to trans fats and other damaged fats, and they reduce good cholesterol levels. And again, it's thinking about, well, normally our essential fats would be transporting cholesterol, but we haven't got them perhaps available to do that. They reduce your natural anti-inflammatory prostaglandins because they're blocking the uptake of your essential fats if they're coming in. They also reduce with cell metabolism, but they're linked to lowered testosterone in the body, poor sperm production, prostate disease, really bad for men. So that flora guy at the beginning, don't go near him. Obesity, immune system depression, and diabetes, linked to all of those. And something popped into my head then, which is that I often suggest that when men are working with omega-3, because it's nice maybe, you know, to bring in the golden linseeds and so on, particularly if you are vegan or much more vegan. But on the other hand, it's worth thinking for men that where estrogen supports the uptake of omega-3, testosterone tends to block it. And so for men, it's much more important perhaps that they do have some oily fish in the diet. So with your trans fats, the foods last longer, but unfortunately the cravings increase. Your memory doesn't, your memories of the foods probably don't really last. I mean, if I were to say to you as you sat there, can you remember a meal out where the food was really exquisite, and it's, you know, the memory of that meal has stayed with you because it was such an amazing meal. And it was probably cooked absolutely from scratch.
Yeah.
Whereas if we go for something like a, you know, a McDonald's or a Wimpy or goodness knows what, there isn't a memory there as such of that food. There might be a craving for it, but there isn't that kind of memory that would come from a really amazing meal. And of course, our memory will be impacted hugely. I've just got a quote there from you for you there from a guy who wrote the book Smart Fats, Michael Schmidt. So some of those oils will create really good quality membranes, and others not so much. And so it's thinking about another quote of his, the actual structure of your cells, you know, like we've said, the stones of a palace, the building blocks of your house are based on what you put in your mouth. I'm really sorry, that was a long one.
we sort of interrupted you so much. I just think I know I'm not doing it right.
Well, we can have a chat about this, yeah, in the next couple of days. But you know, the thing is that the questions are always great.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah. Very, 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 very thought-provoking, Susie. Makes you think.
You know, Jane, you and John and me have had that eczema.
So does Catherine, Shelley.
Pardon?
Catherine as well.
Yeah, but John and I have had it this year, and it's been a really stressful year as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Susie,
Right. Well, I'm going to buy more oily fish.
Yeah.
I said that to John yesterday, actually. I said, we really must buy more oily fish.
I don't think I eat enough.
Preempted my session.
Yeah.
Any
really
questions?
Well, I think.
Well, I'm going to, I mean, I've missed a bit, didn't I? But when you send the YouTube video link, it's going to be really interesting to go through all this again, Susie, because there was a lot of information. It was really good, but I need to think about it a lot more, and try and get those essential fatty acids certainly into the diet a bit more. I mean, I think actually on average we do quite well, but there's always room for improvement, definitely.
Well,
Mm.
we can have a look at that over the next couple of days and have a chat
Mm.
about supplementation if you want to.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, great.
Susie, did you see I said I couldn't do tomorrow morning at 9:30?
oh no, I'm sorry, I haven't checked anything at all. That's,
Well, you won't
yeah.
today.
Sorry, I won't be here at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Can I just rearrange that time
Yeah,
with you?
we'll rearrange.
Yeah,
Yes, of
okay.
course.
You can
I
email.
might even appreciate that, Shelley.
I think you might want to log
Explain.
in tomorrow. I've probably done you a favour.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah. But I'll look forward
Great.
to
Yeah.
having a chat.
Again, Susie, your brochure thing, because a friend of mine was interested in doing the course and I can't find the original thing you sent.
Oh yes. You mean
Please.
the Word document with the list of weeks
Yeah.
breakdown? Yes, of course. Yes.
Send it over to me and then
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you. You've gone really quiet, Shelley. Have I gone quiet?
No, just Shelley.
Just Shelley.
You've done something to your volume, Shell.
not touched anything. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Slightly louder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've just gone a bit quiet. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'll send that through. Thanks
Thank
very much.
So just let me know, give me some alternative times, it's fine, I'll just catch up with you whenever.
Lovely. I'll do that. Yeah. Thank you.
It's really interesting yet again, I loved it.
Thank you.
Mm.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to your questions. You'll get a chance to think about them now.
Yeah.
Maybe while I'm not bombarding you with information.
Yeah. Well,
I think you should get to bed now,
Yes,
Susie.
have a good sleep.
I think you've earned it today.
I don't think it'll take long for me to go to sleep.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
love them.
Lovely.
Look after you.
okay.
Okay.
See
We'll
you.
see you Friday.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you ever so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.